Welcome to the Thin Places Travel Podcast, where we discuss places where the veil between this world and the eternal world is thin. I'm your host, Mindie Burgoyne. Coming up is the second of two interviews with Anthony Murphy, an expert on the World Heritage Site known as Bruna Boyne, or the Boyne Valley. In this episode, Anthony talks about his recent once-in-a-lifetime discovery that he made while doing some aerial photography.
I said to Ken, "What the hell is that?" He came rushing over and he said to me, "What are you seeing?" And I said, "There's a giant circle in the field west of Site P." I knew that this was something very important.
Welcome to episode 14 of the Thin Places Travel Podcast. This episode is a follow-up to episode 13 when I interviewed Irish ancient monument expert Anthony Murphy. Anthony is a husband and father of 5 who currently works full-time as a journalist, but he spends a portion of his free time examining and studying and photographing the ancient monuments in the Boyne Valley. This is a World Heritage Site, and the valley was not too far from where Anthony lives. And if you follow his Facebook page, Mythical Ireland, you'll be able to see some of the awesome photographs he's taken around that area. In July of this year, 2018, Anthony and his friend were in the Boyne Valley doing some aerial photography with drones. Anthony was able to see a previously undiscovered henge and 2 smaller mounds nearby in a farmer's field with the aerial photography. The postholes were only evident because of a recent drought that Ireland had suffered. Anthony reported his findings and shared his videos with the local television network, and by the next morning, his discovery had moved around the world. He was featured on the Washington Post, the New York Times, NPR Radio, and Time magazine. In this interview, Anthony shares those intimate feelings he had just days before when he made that discovery. He talks about what the discovery means and what it may tell us about the people who lived in the region many thousands of years ago. So we are so happy to be able to talk with Anthony Murphy today, just 4 days after he made an amazing discovery. Thanks for talking to us this morning, Anthony.
Glad to be here, Mindie.
Can you just tell us about your day Tuesday and what happened?
Well, I had flown the drone on Monday evening to take a picture of a new archaeological dig that's taken place in one of the fields close to NEWGRANGE, and that's being led by Geraldine and Matthew Stout. So I flew the drone, took a picture of the trench with NEWGRANGE in the background, didn't really do any other photography from the air, landed the drone, went home, shared the picture. Now, I was already aware of some headlines in the UK where some previously unrecorded archaeological features had shown up in the crops due to the drought. And so when I shared the picture of the excavation, Steve Davis, an archaeologist from UCD, who I'm friends with, messaged me on Facebook to say, you should go down and have a look at Site P, which is an embanked enclosure, one of these great henge monuments of the Boyne. He said, it's going to show features that aren't normally visible because of the drought. So I said, actually, that's a great idea. All day Tuesday in work, something was niggling away at me. You have to go and fly this evening. You have to go and fly. You have to. So went home, got the grub, the food, rammed it into my mouth. Hardly had time to digest it. Got the drone and drove out to the Boyne Valley. And talk about serendipity and coincidence. Just as I was about to launch the drone, a very good friend of mine, Ken Williams, who's another photographer and drone flyer, arrived on the scene. And so he pulled in and he said, you flying? I said, I am. He said, sure, I'll fly with you, you know. We flew the drones for about 10 or 15 minutes. So on average, you probably have a 15-minute battery life. Had a look at Site A, which is the little mound down in front of NEWGRANGE with a henge around it, and that field, because there are markings in that field that I hadn't seen before. And generally, had a look around the place. Battery was running low, brought the drone back and landed. And I said, right, now I'm going to go down and have a look at Site P. So put a new battery in, launched again, and went down to Site P. I did a circuit of Site P, and indeed, Steve was right. There are features because of the scorch marks in the grass at Site P that I hadn't seen before. Now, I haven't actually shared those pictures, obviously, because of what happened next. But on a second sort of circuit, or on my way back down to it, as it were, on the right-hand side of the image, in the field next to Site P, west of Site P, it's a field of crop. I could see what I thought was a circular shape. I said, "Ooh, that looks interesting." Flew a little bit closer and could see fairly quickly that this was definitely a huge circle in the field, and let out an exclamation, said to Ken, "What the hell is that?" He came rushing over with his drone controller to look at my screen, but because they're radio transmitters, when they're in close proximity, they interfere with each other. And so when he brought his drone controller close to mine, it obliterated what was on the screen, so he couldn't see it. And he said to me, "What are you seeing?" And I said, "There's a giant circle in the field west of Site P." So he said, "Right, I'll go and take a look." And we separated again by about 15 feet. He flew down towards the area as I started to take pictures of this. And as I started to take pictures of it, I could see very quickly that in addition to this broken circle, which I initially thought might have been tractor marks in the field, there were two outer circles of what looked like dots, possibly post holes. Now, at this point, which is within 10, 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds of first seeing it, I knew that this was something very important. I knew this wasn't a hoax or a prank, and I knew that it was likely to be a henge, being familiar with that type of monument. But then Ken lets out an exclamation, "Oh my God!" He couldn't believe what he was seeing on his screen. And so what follows is history, as they say. For the next 10 or 15 minutes, we were doing circuits of it and flying over it and getting pictures. Ken shot some video as well. To say that we were giddy with excitement is an understatement. We're both very familiar with the landscape. We know where all the monuments are. We know where all of the previously unrecorded monuments that were revealed by the Instar project in 2010. We know where they all are. And we knew there was no henge in this field, in this location, in this field.
Just for people that don't know, would you just define a henge?
A henge is like a quasi-circular enclosure, sometimes with an embankment around it, sometimes with stones in the interior, oftentimes with, circles of post holes around it. They are thought to be ceremonial or ritual enclosures. Some of them have been shown to be astronomically aligned and beyond that. Now, there are several other features that we photographed in that field that are previously either unrecorded or not recorded in such detail. We were just tremendously excited. Ken will tell you as well. We were giggling, actually. We were giggling. We just couldn't believe it. We were filled with this excited energy. We both landed the drones, and the very first thing that we needed to do was to send some images to some archaeologists, because we knew this was definitely a find of great significance. I think there were 3 archaeologists that we communicated with. Now, Steve Davis was one of them. And in fact, I had a number for Steve, so I rang him. And I said, "Listen, you've got to watch your Facebook message. I'm going to send you a couple of pictures. We've just found something." And he said, "Yeah, Ken was messaging me there." And I said, "You got to have a look at these." And within minutes, he was coming back to us, with an affirmation that this was something incredibly important. One of the other archaeologists was Geraldine Stout, who is taking part in the dig, which is a separate site and a separate field. And Geraldine has actually written about the henge monuments of the Boyne Valley. She was tremendously excited and shared the pictures on Mythical Ireland Facebook with great excitement, obviously. And within 10 minutes, they were gone viral. And on Wednesday morning, early on Wednesday morning, about 7:30, I had the local radio station onto me. And that was the start of a media storm that followed, in which the story went basically all around the world. So I'm just catching breath now, Mindie. It's Sunday and it's only just calming down now,
Right. I just before we connected here this morning, I just did a quick Google. I've been following this since you posted it. And I thought, let me just type in and see how far this has gone. Anthony Murphy discovery. Didn't even use quotes. And Anthony Murphy's a pretty common name.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you've got it out there, but the entire first page is Time, NPR, Washington Post, New York Times. So
it's mad.
Just in a few days. That's really a great tribute to you. Just a couple of questions here for those that may not really understand what this means. What were you actually seeing? Were you seeing post holes? What are these henges? What kind of monuments are they?
They're enigmatic monuments, actually. They're very different to the Passage Tomb monuments, but they date to roughly the same sort of phase. So if you can imagine, NEWGRANGE is approximately 3100 BC. these things date sometime from then to about 2500 BC. We think that they are large sort of ceremonial monuments where some sort of outdoor inclusive ritual was held. So they differ very greatly from the passage tombs because although Newgrange is huge, its chamber only comfortably fits about 20 people. And in fact, really probably less than that if you're talking about needing space for some sort of sacred ritual. The Henge monuments, on the other hand, are much more inclusive. They're obviously designed to hold greater crowds. We can imagine anything up to 2,000 people comfortably fitting within the interior of this thing. It was likely that it was largely constructed out of timbers, so the post holes would have contained probably very large tree boughs or trunks of trees that had been planted into the ground or buried into the ground, as it were. It's very interesting. It's got archaeologists very excited from the point of view that the ditch has segments, segmented regularly, and in a way that they haven't seen with any other Irish henge monument. So that has them tremendously excited. What they were used for, I mean, we're probably looking at a version of Stonehenge without the stones. So at the moment, what's happening is that they're trying to geolocate the monument, to put it onto the map accurately and to try and determine a possible alignment. Because there appears to be a portal or entrance, some sort of a porch. There's a box, a square feature on the sort of west-northwest end of it, which may or may not be an opening. And on the opposite side of it, there's a bulge, like an extra arc. And in all evaluations, it appears to be a carbon copy of Site P, which is right next door to it, which has led some people to speculate that one perhaps was a prototype or a carbon copy of the other. The other significance is that the Bend of the Boyne, the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Newgrange, now contains the greatest concentration of late Neolithic henges anywhere in the world. So, like, on multiple levels, this thing has the archaeological community excited.
So let me just get this straight. This big mound that you see with the box on one side, this was something that was like the passage tomb in that you went inside it.
No, it's not. No? It's not a mound. It's not a mound. No,
it's not a mound. It's just a circle.
Well, a lot of the henges have an embankment around them.
Right. Well, I guess that's what a henge is, right?
Which is quite often broken in places. So, for instance, the very famous Site Q Douth Henge has sort of two banks that are broken like that, and the two gaps actually line up with summer solstice sunrise. And myself and Richard Moore were the first ones to photograph that in the summer of 2000. But this one doesn't appear to have had a bank. What we're looking at is a timber structure, but I don't think, now the archaeologists would correct me on this, I don't think these were roofed structures. They're so enormous that to support a roof would have been, I think we're looking at some sort of an open air ceremonial
a ritual site. A ritual
yeah,
site.
But they do differ. And this one has elements of what archaeologists refer to as a causewayed enclosure, where the ditch is broken, the ditch is excavated, as it were, dug out, but sections of it are left like openings into it. But the causewayed enclosures are much less regular in terms of the breaks, the openings into them, whereas this one has a very regular pattern to it. And as I said, that's a unique feature that has archaeologists basically asking the question, or basically stating that at this moment in time, they don't know what they're looking at. It's got them very, very amused.
Did you just see one, or did you see more than one?
Yeah, we saw more than one. Immediately to the west of this great henge, there's another broken enclosure with those regular ditch markings, with the regular breaks in them. Now, this site was previously recorded on the Instar project. It's actually a passage tomb. So there's a passage tomb in its interior surrounded by an enclosure. Now, there was gradiometry geophysics undertaken there in 2010, but our image of that site has revealed more detail than was seen in the gradiometry. So these drought conditions really have led to a sort of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to image these features in a way that they've never been seen by archaeologists. There's a third feature in the northeast of the field, which was previously recorded as some sort of a ringed enclosure, but which we now suspect is a grooved ware, what's called a four-poster, a circular site with four large post holes in it, and possibly a larger circle of post holes around it. We've seen part of that in the images. So again, previously recorded site, seen in more detail. And finally, before we finish talking about all the new stuff, There's a sort of a lake in the middle of that field, which may be a landscape feature dating from the time when Charles Campbell built Newgrange House, or what is now Newgrange Farm. He's the one whose labourers found the opening of Newgrange when they started taking stone from it in 1699. But immediately in the vicinity of that lake, there are a feature. There's a series of dark features, and we don't know what they are. But again, speculation, and this is mere speculation. The speculation is that we are possibly looking at habitation sites, which is tremendously exciting. I've been telling my visitors, I facilitate tours in the Boyne Valley. I've been telling my tour guests for a long time that we've never found where these people actually live, the people who built the monuments. I'm very excited about the possibility that we may now be sort of venturing towards that. Now, everybody has to understand what we're seeing here is simply marks in crops. The actual archaeology under the ground may reflect a different scenario. So a lot of this at the moment is speculation, but obviously informed speculation.
Right.
One field under crops revealing, because of the drought conditions, things that we never could have dreamed possible. And the discovery of a brand new Neolithic henge is beyond my wildest dreams and expectations. Right. It's fabulous.
And so how close is it to the actual Newgrange monument?
Centre to centre, I measured it, approximately measured it. It's about 750 metres to the, not directly south. So if you're standing at the entrance of Newgrange, sort of looking that way, you would have to look sort of a little bit to your right down in the fields. So a little bit west of south. What we're seeing is an image on the top of the crop, which is about 5 or 6 feet above the ground. A subtle difference in the colour of the crop. The crop growing out of the archaeology is slightly healthier, so therefore slightly greener and slightly more lush. The surrounding crops are slightly less healthy and a little bit yellower and a little bit paler. And so you get this contrast in the top of the crop. There would be absolutely no point trying to view this on the ground.
Right.
You just simply wouldn't see it.
So is there anybody there at Newgrange, if people tour Newgrange, which they can tour, is there anybody that's going to be informed about this to be able to talk about it? Or is there any way somebody can know when they're there where this is or what this all means?
Very interesting question. Well, look, the first thing that has happened is that myself and Ken Williams, the co-discoverer, have reported the finds to the National Monuments Service. Now, as a result of that, the National Monuments Service commissioned a helicopter to carry out an aerial survey on Friday, 3 days after the discovery, and they have discovered additional features apparently in their survey, which is greatly exciting. So the first thing that happens is it's going to be officially added to what we call the Sites and Monuments Record, or the Record of Monuments and Places. So it'll be officially designated. It will probably be given a label. That'll likely be something very unexciting. Not the Murphy Williams henge or anything like that, or not the new henge, or some people have suggested the drone henge because it was discovered with drones. I thought maybe clone henge because it appears to be a clone of Site P. The very first designation that it's been given unofficially is Site P1. So it'll be a very boring and functional label that it'll be given. Now, archaeologists will probably want to undertake some extra surveying of it. That may involve geophys. But look, that's all down the line. That's for the future. People are asking about an archaeological dig. I would say highly unlikely in the short to medium term. There are 200 or so monuments in the UNESCO World Heritage Site. There are now, as I said, the largest concentration of late Neolithic henges anywhere in the world. And I'm trying to just make sure I'm right about this. I don't think any of those have been actually excavated. Site Q at Doubt, the Doubt henge, has been under investigation for the past 5 years. There has been no excavation there up to this time. So highly unlikely. But look, archaeology doesn't always need to dig. Digging gives you the best answer in terms of dating material, and probably can help to more definitively define what it is and what period it belongs to. But in the meantime, there are a lot of other things that they can do to help determine the nature of it.
And Site P, what is Site P?
That is the one immediately east of it that is identical in many ways to it, but is likely to be very different in that Site P is an embanked enclosure with a very, very obvious bank around it, and possibly a stone revetment on the inside of that earthen bank. So a similar monument in terms of scale, design, plan, etc., but different in its execution.
Mm-hmm. So what happens now? They're going to study them and come up with, I guess they'll just map them out and say this is what it all looks like.
That's precisely what they'll do. They'll be looking to get as much imagery as possible and to geolocate it, to place it very precisely into the existing maps of the World Heritage Site. And from then they can start looking at things like the spatial arrangement of these henges, because there are 4 in the close vicinity of this. So there are 3 in a row now: the Site LP2, the new henge, and Site P. They're almost in a row, a little bit like the Thornborough henges or the Priddy henges. The other thing that, you asked about, will visitors know about this? Yeah, I think there's at present the exhibition at the Brunebonia Visitor Centre is being redesigned. You'd have to imagine that a lot of the newer archaeological features that have been found in the past decade will be part of that exhibition. I imagine that visitors will, in the future, will get a sense that, of the hugely monumental scale of the complex at Brunebonia, that, the concentration is always on Newgrange and Nowth, and to a lesser extent Dowth, as 3 of the largest and grandest passage tombs in the world. But people forget that there are 40 other passage tombs in the bend of the Boyne. There are now, I don't know how many, but there are now a large number of Neolithic henges. There are ceremonial avenues, there are standing stones, there are ring forts, there are medieval features, there are probably medieval granges dating from the time of the Cistercians. It's a truly remarkable landscape. And the breathtaking thing for me is that the Neolithic stuff required the most tremendous and massive input of human labour, manpower, sheer will, determination. And this is all in a time when people didn't have metal technology, no metal tools. They used, polished stone axe heads to cut down trees, a tremendously labour-intensive activity. And there were so many of them, and yet these people only lived until they were 30 years of age. In fact, the average lifespan of a male in the Neolithic is 28, and the female is 26. They were smaller and lighter than we are, and they lived such short lives. And we have to imagine now, we really have to, that the Brunebonia complex was, if not a regional project in terms of population, a national one. In other words, that people came there to participate in both construction and in ritual from long distances, because we can't imagine that the population required for those tremendous construction populations was entirely contained within that relatively small area of Ireland,
Yeah, that's amazing. The video that you took, I saw it on the Washington Post site. Is that Ken's video? Whose video is that?
The video that has been shared largely is Ken's. Since then, I have made my own video, which is available on my YouTube channel.
Okay, I'll put the link to that so people can see it.
Great.
On the YouTube channel. Is there anything else you want to say about this?
No, just that I've had the most phenomenal 5 days. I'm exhausted, actually. I've been fielding media queries for the whole week. I've found it very difficult to work or to concentrate on anything. Only finally got round to writing a blog post about it on my own website last night. I'm delighted. I'm so chuffed. Personally, this is huge. I've spent 19 years of my life dedicating myself to research of the monuments and the mythology and the alignments and the astronomy and the landscape. I've written lots of books. I've been passionate about it for a long time. It's not my job. Some people think it's my job. This is something I do outside of my day job and obviously my family life and everything else, just to say that, if somebody had said to me, you were going to make a discovery in the Boyne Valley, I would have said, well, maybe I will, because, I'm out there so often. I thought maybe I'd find a fallen over standing stone in a ditch somewhere, or maybe half a ring fort somewhere. But to find a Neolithic henge, I actually still can't believe it. I'm pinching myself. I'm still thinking, I'm going to wake up and someone's going to say, it was all a dream, Anthony. Astonishing,
Well, we're very happy for you, and we're very happy you made the discovery, and very happy that you're willing to talk to me. I mean, I just can't believe it myself. And, I think I saw it right after you posted it, and I went, oh my God, this is big. And then it really was big. It was RTE, and then it was, Moira told me, she said, it's Washington Post reported it this morning. So
yeah.
Congratulations to you. Thanks, it's so wonderful for all of us. It's wonderful for all of us. So I will make sure we have links to your website, your YouTube channel, all of that, so people can see a little further.
Great.
And thanks for talking to us today.
No problem. Been delighted to have done it.
Thank you for listening to the Thin Places Travel Podcast. You can find us on the web at thinplacespodcast.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at @TravelHags, and on Facebook at facebook.com/thinplaces. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a quick rating on iTunes and consider subscribing. Please join us for our next episode, where we will be featuring guest Dolores Whalen, a speaker and author who has written the book Ever Ancient, Ever New. So long for now.